My name is Thayne Lamb. I'm with MTS, and tonight I'm making Torticas de Moron, a sugar cookie from Cuba. So, first thing that we need to do, we have a quarter cup of butter, we have a quarter cup of brown sugar, and soon a quarter cup of solid coconut oil. Right. And now we need the egg yolk, which is going to be very fun. Okay, good. The yolk didn't break. I'm hoping that I'll get this to work. Hey! Now we move on to a big bowl where the flour and baking soda are. And we are now going to mix in what is just a big ball of sugar and fat. Now that our big thing of fat and sugar is in, we can add a half a teaspoon of our lime zest into the dough. And there's a lot of it here now because it's going to get sprinkled on the cookies after they come out of the oven, which will be tomorrow because eventually the dough will have to rest overnight in the fridge. We also need some lime juice. Now we mix this until our dough forms.
I mean, it's a sugar cookie dough. Maybe you need to knead it a bit.
Yeah, probably. Look at that. Look at our nice little dough ball. Okay. So now that we have our dough ball, what we need to do is sort of coax it into the shape of a log without it completely crumbling apart. That's about 2 inches thick. Now what we need to do is get this puppy wrapped up tightly so that it maintains its shape while it's in the fridge. And voila! We have our little cookie dough log. So this dough log is going to be sitting in the fridge overnight to firm up, and then tomorrow, before we actually go and get ready to bake it, we're going to be cutting it into little tiny discs that are about 1 inch thick. So the rest of this video will be done sometime tomorrow. Okay, so now we are back. This is the day after. Our dough has been sitting in the fridge, firming up overnight. So now all of the flavors that we have in here, the brown sugar, the coconut oil, the lime zest, all of that has had 24 hours to get to know each other. So now the flavors are going to be a lot more potent now that they are all mixed together and they are all happily homogeneous. So first thing that we're going to need to do before we actually get it into the oven, which has been preheated to 350 degrees, is we are going to have to cut our log of dough into discs that are roughly about 1 inch or half an inch thick. Alright, so now our log has been cut up. It seems like it's going to yield about 12 cookies with this recipe. But before we actually get them put into the oven, what we want to do is give the tops of them a wash with egg whites so that as they're cooking in the oven, they get really nice and golden brown. Now they are all glossied up and ready to go into the oven for 12 to 15 minutes. While we're waiting for our cookies to bake, let's talk some shop about Cuban theater. So Cuban theater has 3 distinct styles. First, there is the zarzuela, which is an operetta format that commented on political events and issues. During the 1980s, zarzuela theater would be focusing a lot more on music and dance, while the second style is known as buffo, which is a comedy and satire with stock characters that originated in the early 1800s. For Europeans and Americans, the style sounds a lot like commedia dell'arte or restoration comedy, but the creators of buffo theater tailored it specifically more towards Cuban heritage and Cuban customs. A third style is African theater. Cubans helped to preserve language, use the same kind of instruments, chants, and dances that all came about in the theme where shows were focused on the polytheistic religions in Africa. Getting to things more modern, theater in Cuba didn't really become supported by the state until about 1959 under the Ministry of Culture. The Ministry of Culture in Cuba is a ministry that helps to protect and preserve Cubans' cultural heritage. However, Cuban theater did suffer a really big hit in the 90s when an economic crisis hit Cuba, and theater really took a toll. Because people weren't able to make enough money and work, people couldn't go and see theater, let alone make theater. However, Cuba has very much come back from its economic crisis in the 90s, and now does a lot of very big, bright, colorful theater with lavish costumes and sets. If you even look at pictures on Google Images, it's stunning. But now it sounds like our cookies are done, so let's go and check those out. Alright, let's get these bad boys out of the oven. Oh, wow. Ooh. Those browned up really nicely. That egg wash definitely did its job. Look at how shiny they are and how golden brown they got. They smell amazing too. Even as they're coming out of the oven, just like opening the door, you can smell the lime from the cookies. But we aren't quite done with them yet. We have to wait and let them cool before we can add the finishing touches. Alrighty. Cookies have cooled off completely, which means now that it's time to add the finishing touches to our Torticas de Moron now. The first of which is going to be even more lime zest. And now lastly, we are topping it off with granulated sugar. And there we have it. Some very beautifully plated Cuban sugar cookies, Torticas de Moron. Gosh, they look so exquisite, really, with all of the sugar on top and the lime zest. They look really alive, almost like they have a little forest on top of them. Thank you to the Multicultural Theatrical Society at UNI for providing us with a really cool opportunity to do stuff like this. Please go and look at the Multicultural Theatrical Society Twitter, and please reach out to all of our board members if you want to join and become a member. We are a very fun, very inclusive group of people who want to give a voice to people whose voices are unrepresented. But my name is Thayne, and thank you for joining me on my journey to make the sugar cookie from Cuba, Torticas de Moron.